In the day's other news, U.S. Attorney General William Barr blasted the FBI's probe into links between Russia and the 2016 Trump campaign. The Justice Department's internal watchdog reported yesterday that despite mistakes in the way the investigation was carried out, it was not motivated by political bias. But Barr told NBC News today that the entire undertaking was baseless.
I think our nation was turned on its head for 3 years. I think based on a completely bogus narrative that was largely fanned and hyped by an irresponsible press. I think that leaves open the possibility to infer bad faith.
Earlier, President Trump criticized FBI Director Christopher Wray, who had welcomed the findings. On Twitter, the president called Wray the, quote, current director and said, quote, he will never be able to fix the FBI. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo issued a new warning to Russia today not to interfere in next year's U.S. elections. Pompeo hosted Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Later, he said he raised election interference in their wide-ranging talks.
I was clear, it's unacceptable, and I made our expectations of Russia clear. The Trump administration will always work to protect the integrity of our elections, period. Should Russia or any foreign actor take steps to undermine our democratic processes, we will take action in response.
Lavrov also met with President Trump, and the White House said the president repeated the warning, but Lavrov told reporters late today that elections were not discussed. 6 people were killed in a shootout today in Jersey City, New Jersey. SWAT teams swarmed to a kosher market when 2 men holed up there after killing a policeman elsewhere. 3 civilians and the gunman died in a gun battle that lasted hours. Officials said there was no indication of terrorism. The U.S. Navy has grounded some 300 military flyers from Saudi Arabia after Friday's shooting attack at a naval airbase in Pensacola, Florida. A Saudi lieutenant shot 3 people to death before he was killed in turn. The Navy said today the grounding applies to 3 installations in Florida. There is no word on when it might end. The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments today on whether insurance companies are owed $12 billion under Obamacare. The law, officially the Affordable Care Act, incentivized insurers to sell plans on federal marketplaces by reimbursing them for losses. Later, Congress limited that provision, and the Obama and the Trump administrations balked at paying. The United Nations top court has begun a hearing into Myanmar's alleged genocide against Rohingya Muslims. The leader of the mainly Buddhist nation, Aung San Suu Kyi, faced protests as she arrived at the court in the Netherlands. Inside, lawyers speaking for Gambia and other Muslim states detailed atrocities.
Everyone was a target and no one was spared. Mothers, infants, pregnant women, the old and infirmed all fell victim to the ruthless campaign.
The military-led assault in Myanmar led to an exodus of more than 700,000 Rohingya to neighboring Bangladesh. A new wave of strikers in France joined transportation workers today in a 6-day-old walkout. Thousands rallied in Paris, where bus drivers chanted as teachers, airport workers, and others marched. They were protesting plans to standardize pensions. Turnout was about half of last week's march, when some 800,000 showed up. In Australia, wildfires turned the air toxic today in the country's largest city. Smoke cloaked the iconic Sydney Opera House this morning, and the skyline was all but erased under the haze. Air samples registered 11 times the hazardous level. Back in this country, ExxonMobil has won a legal victory linked to climate change. A state judge in Manhattan ruled today that there was no proof the company lied about the potential costs of future climate regulations. New York State had charged that the energy giant duped investors. A 23rd U.S. House Republican is retiring and will not seek re-election. Representative Ted Yoho of Florida announced his decision today, citing his pledge to serve only 4 terms. Yoho is strongly aligned with the Tea Party faction and with President Trump. And on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 27 points to close at 27,881. The Nasdaq fell 5 points, and the S&P 500 slipped 3. Still to come on the NewsHour, a deep dive into confidential documents revealing distortions by those leading the war in Afghanistan. Climate scientists release a dire warning about the Arctic. Attempts to reform Maryland's parole system, where those sentenced as minors to life have only a sliver of a chance at release, and more.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.